Welcome back to Morning, y'all. The U.S. government is now shut down. Non-essential federal workers are staying home. Without them, some government functions are on hold. Others continue with longer wait times and less customer services. The main sticking point is health care this time around. Democrats want to reverse Medicaid cuts and stop enhanced Obamacare subsidies from expiring. The Congressional Budget Office estimates about 750,000 federal workers face those furloughs. And joining us now is East Texas Congressman Nathaniel Moran, representing Texas 1st District. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning, Dana. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C., and it's a much different day here this morning as I walk to work. Many fewer folks that are here working, a lot less traffic. And it's unfortunate that the Democrats have put politics over people, as they've done several times over the last weeks and months in their policy decisions.
Yeah, East Texans waking up wanting to know what's the immediate impact, though, to their family.
Yeah, as you said, there's going to be a lot of furloughs that happen. And as we know, government shutdowns do not save any money ultimately. I don't seek a shutdown, but neither do I fear it. And certainly I'm not going to roll over to unreasonable demands by the Democrats to prevent a shutdown. We provided a clean CR to the Democrats several weeks ago. The House Republicans passed that and sent it to the Senate that would extend funding until November 21st. That was a very reasonable position to take to keep government going while we negotiated on these other matters that they want to raise. But they're being completely unreasonable in their demands. They're demanding not just to unroll all of the $1.1 trillion worth of waste, fraud, and abuse savings that we got in the working families tax cuts, but some of that includes like a $50 billion provision for rural health care. That's an impact on East Texans. East Texans are likely going to see a little slower service when it comes to Social Security and HHS. HHS is likely going to have about 40% of their employees furloughed or more. They're going to see TSA problems. They're going to see maybe some issues with air traffic control because a lot of these folks call in since they're not getting paid during this time frame, even though they're having to work. And so it does create a hardship. It's going to create a hardship on a number of veterans and military families, because when we get to payday, they're not going to get paid, even though they're called on to work, and that's simply not the right direction to go. Again, we want to be reasonable. The Democrats have been unreasonable through this process.
Why do you feel like Democrats and Republicans are so far apart in this health care arena, where that's really the main sticking point right now?
Democrats are involved in a real internal debate, and they're having a problem internally on their side of the aisle, figuring out which direction they want to go. That's why they've thrown everything and the kitchen sink on top of this 7-week CR to try to demand as demands for moving forward. Not just the health care issues, which I'll be glad to address, but also things like they want to undo the ability to do rescissions because they don't want us to cut spending. They want to undo the $50 billion and the health care, rural health care fund that I talked about. But when you talk about the enhanced ACA subsidies, here's what they're betting on. They're betting on the American people not finding out the truth of what's really at stake here. We're talking about a COVID-era program. It started in 2020 by the Democrats. It was set to end in 2025, and the Democrats set that termination date when they established this 5-year temporary program. But now that we're here in 2025, and those enhanced subsidies, which really have no income cap limit and have really only served to help the health insurance companies drive up their profits, it hasn't reduced premiums at all. Now that that time frame has gotten here for that to end, the Democrats are screaming that they don't want it to end. Well, that good old saying, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, and that's what we're facing right now. Is Democrats want to extend this program at the cost of about $400 billion to the taxpayers, a program that they started in 2020 and they set to end in 2025. It needs to end. COVID era is over with.
How do you feel? How many East Texans do you think fall in that category of people who are going to be furloughed and not get a paycheck from the federal government?
Well, it's hard to say. Certainly more of the people that are going to be furloughed are here in Washington, D.C., and there may be some incidental positives about that because, frankly, I think the White House and OMB is going to take a hard look at what employees are there, which ones are willing to work, which ones are not willing to work, which ones are willing to accomplish the mission of the president, and try to use this time frame to even thin out the federal government even more. That may be the only positive that comes out of this in this time frame. But truly, back in East Texas, we're going to continue. I can tell you, our office is going to continue to assist citizens as they need it. They're still going to get their Social Security checks. They're still going to see the benefits that are rolling out that typically happen on a monthly periodic basis. But services from the federal government are going to be slower, and you're going to see certainly a lot of disruption as it relates to, I think, travel, air travel, and federal installations.
Yeah, what do you say to those people who are going to be working but not getting paid?
Yeah, it's a problem. And again, this is one of the reasons why I don't think shutdowns really benefit us at all. And I said that even under a Democratic administration. I don't think these shutdowns are beneficial, because you have people that either are working and not getting paid while they're working, and then they have to endure hardships during the time that they don't get a paycheck on their payday. Or you send people home and furlough them, and ultimately, under the law, they get paid when they come back. So now we're talking about paying people that didn't work for a time period. Well, that's not value to the taxpayer. That's not giving the best and highest use of our taxpayer dollars, and certainly not giving efficiency to government. So I like the prospect. Dusty Johnson, my friend from South Dakota, has a bill that would roll 14 days of a CR if we get to a point where the government becomes unfunded. It's just an automatic CR for 14 days to keep the government funded. Ron Johnson on the Senate side proposes the same from Louisiana. It's a good way to avoid this brinksmanship that happens on both sides of the aisle. Frankly, let's just be honest, it happens on both sides of the aisle. There's no reason to put the American people in the position to have to face the consequences of that brinkmanship. Instead, we need to get down to business and get the problem solved, get 60 votes in the Senate, which is what we need to pass funding.
If we look back to 2018 during the last government shutdown, as soon as that first missed paycheck happened for a lot of people, you mentioned this just a few minutes ago, in about 2 weeks, we started seeing those sick calls come in from TSA officers, and it really increased at airports across the country. Do you think that's what it's going to take again this time around to get this government shutdown to end, or do you think there's something that can happen between now and then to get the two sides to come together to do what's right for the American people?
I think it's going to take political pressure like that, because this Schumer shutdown, and it's squarely on Chuck Schumer's shoulders, this Schumer shutdown is only happening because he's betting politically that the American people will support the Democrats in their unreasonable demands. That's not going to be the case. When they get political backlash over the next few days, from their constituents and from people across the country saying, why aren't you being reasonable? Why aren't you just accepting what the Republican House passed several weeks ago, and that is a clean CR that keeps funding going till November 21st. And in the meantime, go ahead and dialogue and get the issues resolved that you want to get resolved. But how in the world do they expect us to agree to unreasonable demands, to unroll all the good work we did in the working family tax cuts bill, and to trim waste, fraud, and abuse in that? And then the rescission packages. And then why would they try to blame the Republicans for a termination of an enhanced COVID-era subsidy program that only benefits the health insurance companies, has driven up premiums for taxpayers across the country for their health care? Why would they blame the Republicans for that ending when they're the ones that set the termination date naturally at the end of 2025? If they thought it should have been permanent, then they should have done that in the first place. And of course they didn't. And we're glad to see it ending, because it's a big burden on the taxpayers, and it's only helping our health insurance companies.
Democrats also want to reverse Medicaid cuts. What do you have against doing that, and where do you stand on that health care side of things?
Yeah, the cuts to eligibility and the changes to eligibility in Medicaid were appropriate, because what we did was we said, look, if you're not eligible or you shouldn't be eligible, you shouldn't be receiving these benefits. That's a waste, fraud, and abuse matter. We had more than 1 million people that were taking advantage of Medicaid in 2 different states. So they would come to Texas and sign up. They'd go to Louisiana and sign up. We wanted to cull them off the rolls. We wanted to check eligibility rolls. The Democrats have said said in their bill they do not want to check the eligibility rolls of Medicaid. Now, there's a reason for that. And it's an unfortunate reason. They want everybody to have it. We've got more than 70 million people on Medicaid right now. It was never intended for that. About 23+ million of those were brought on after in the last 10 years, and a significant number of those folks are doing nothing. They're sitting at home, they're not working, they are able-bodied adults, and so the changes we made to Medicaid eligibility in the working families tax cuts did not impair the elderly, the disabled, the mothers with kiddos, did not impair those folks. And so don't let the Democrats let you believe that they did. It said to able-bodied adults, get up off the couch, work, volunteer, go to school. If you're not willing to take responsibility for your life, then you're not going to receive these benefits. That's where the eligibility changes were. So the benefits won't change. It's just who's eligible for it, and it's the people that should be eligible for it that are going to continue to get that.
You know, trust is big here. The people in East Texas are trusting that's really where the Medicaid fundings come from, and I think they're worried about that. You know, they hear that there's going to be Medicaid cuts, and they think it's going to be coming to them. How do you keep giving them faith in your representation to do what's best for them and help solve this problem as quickly as possible to get the government back working?
Yeah, you know, this communication is vital, and so I appreciate you having me on, and we try to do as much local communication as we can, because there's so much surface level political talk on the national news, frankly, that the truth gets lost. And I encourage all of my folks to dig deep into what the Democrats have filed, what they're proposing, and what we've done and what we're proposing. Get past the talking points and understand the details, because the details matter. And that's why the East Texans sent me to Congress, was to dig in the details, to work hard, to study hard, and to make sure that I understood those details before we put them into place. This bill that we passed this past summer was one of the most transformative pro-family, pro-farmer, pro-business bills in the United States history. We avoided the largest tax hike in American history by passing the Working Families Tax Cuts Act this past year. We're reducing mandatory spending. We're trying to do the things the American people sent us here to do. That's critically important. We are giving back more money to individuals, to families, to farmers in their pockets, so that they can go out and buy better health care, so they can invest in their future, they can save for their retirement, they can spend money for their educational resources for their kiddos. That's what we want Americans to do. The federal government should not be making all those choices. We should be giving more tax dollars back to these individuals, restoring their liberty, and letting them make the decisions about where the dollars go.
Okay, two more before we go. One question a lot of people are asking this morning is, if people are being furloughed and not getting their paychecks, why is Congress not have their paychecks suspended? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I would love for our paychecks to be suspended. Right now, the Constitution does not allow for that. There's a constitutional provision that does not allow for members of Congress's pay to be suspended. I certainly would support suspending pay for members of Congress. I know there's a couple of propositions out there, and I certainly would support those to make sure that members felt the heat if we go into a shutdown. And frankly, I would support the notion that if we go into a shutdown, not only should members not receive their pay, but then when we come out of the shutdown, members should not get their back pay. I think it's ridiculous that we can't get these problems solved on the front end. We need to feel that pain. Okay,
bottom line, what needs to happen here to get the government back open as soon as possible?
Yeah, it's political pressure on people to be reasonable. And right now, the Democrats are not being reasonable. So folks need to call congressional offices around the country and say, hey, listen, we need you to be reasonable. We need you to put the people first and put principles first, put the taxpayer first in the decisions that you make, and stop playing political games with this shutdown. Republicans have done that. We have been reasonable. We have, in fact, passed that clean CR. We've extended the government funding until November 21st. That is sitting at the desk of Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats over on the Senate side, and they need to pass that. They can take it back up, pass that, and get us back to work tomorrow, and they need to feel the pressure.
So whatever side you fall on this issue, you got to let your local representatives know that are in Congress in Washington. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate you, Congressman Moran.
My pleasure, Dana. Thanks so much.
Take care.